What up, story listeners? Welcome to the Real Talk Podcast. A subdivision of the Total Devotion Fellowship Group. My name is Evan, a humble tea snob, and I'll be your host today. Here we are joined by Calvin, the loving seminarian.
What's up, dog?
Charis, the senior who refuses to sleep.
Morning.
And Phoebe, your favorite weeb.
Konnichiwa.
So today is the first episode of Real Talk, and I was wondering how you guys are doing, Calvin.
I'm just chilling. It's another walk in the park.
Yeah, I'm good too. Just doing homework.
Yeah, today was actually really good for me. It was last week that was hard. I was so stressed.
It's that good that you bring it up, actually, because today's first episode will be on stress and mental health in high school. Just wanted to see how you guys are doing and have a good conversation about stress. So our first little bit of today would be talking about sources of stress, just where you guys feel stress from. Just want to talk about why you feel stress and how you feel stressed, but I think we have to first talk about where you feel stress from. So Calvin, where do you feel stress from?
I would say deadlines are a big one. I think there's the culture of I need to get this done and then this done and then this done. And then after a certain while, when you start thinking about all the things you need to get done, the stress really piles on. And then maybe a second one would be relationships, like friendships. I think there's a lot of stress that comes from just trying to maintain and to keep the friendships that you have with others.
Yeah, I think just adding on to that a bit, for high school, obviously there's that grades, the work you do, whether or not your teachers like you. I think personally that's been the source of my stress, just trying to hold that sense of normalcy. And obviously also what Calvin said, I feel kind of losing some friends, not being able to talk to some people. And it's a bit of a burden because those people, I really love them, but I feel I haven't been able to really uphold that relationship too well. So that's also been worrying me a bit.
Yeah, I'd have to agree on the school part. My first day of school, my AP Gov teacher assigned 14 pages of homework. I was really thrilled to do that night. It's a great experience. I just finished college app season, so I guess the whole application process was super stressful. I had deadlines day after day after day for weeks on end. But so I guess in that case, it's also a little bit of uncertainty in terms of, where I'm going to go to school next year and if I'm going to get accepted and if I'm even going to play softball next year. So, yeah.
And then one thing I want to talk about was a lot of this pressure that you guys feel from the stress and stuff. Do you feel a lot of it's from other people? If you say friendships, for example, was a common one. Do you guys feel it's really the friends are making it hard and they're stressing you out, or does it feel it's coming from within and that stress is coming you feel the pressure yourself to maintain these friendships, for example?
Well, I would say that I think I have a lot of expectations of myself oftentimes, and I want to maintain a degree of excellence and really to present myself in a certain way, either with my friends or even with my work. And so I think the stress really pushes me sometimes to try to perform or to achieve to a certain level. And so I would say a good amount of it comes from myself.
Similar to Calvin, I think my story, is really similar. Lots of the stress is because of myself pushing myself to be the person that I want to be. The dreams and hopes, levels that I envision, I think I put a lot of pressure on myself actually to try and reach that. There are a couple more external factors for sure, because I have so many just amazing friends and you want to kind of stay similar, not in that way, but you see people around you excelling, and then obviously you too want to reach that level. Also adding on that you're being from a rather competitive school, there's just a lot of pressure from all angles, really.
For me, it's a constant need to, better myself. I look at other people, I'm okay, So I guess in a way, yeah, it is a little bit external as well, because you have external factors of, you know, just the people you meet and other, I guess, like even from like the expectations that I think other people are putting on me, which may not necessarily be there, but like in my head, I'm like, well, this is what I have to do. Like, you know, as an oldest child, you know, or, you know, all these different aspects of my life. So it's, I guess, a combination of internal pressure, but it's internal pressure that stems from outside sources.
So for a lot of this stress that you guys feel, is it like, do you feel it's really like this outside pressure and it's like getting to you, and so you're like, oh, then it's like, then you feel it internally, or is it really that you're just looking at like, oh, school and all this, and then you're like kind of like amplifying it yourselves?
I would say it's probably an unhealthy combination of both. Just outside factors that, you know, in terms of maybe like seeing my friend at school doing really well, so then I think, you know, I have to do this, or even just, you know, getting into college. Like, I think in society, there's definitely a heavy emphasis getting into these certain schools, and if you don't get in, it's a little bit like, hey, you know, like it makes it seem like that's a show of your intelligence or how smart you are, how successful you're going to be in the future, when it's not that's not necessarily true. I think I also amplify it a lot, though. I tend to make assumptions about other people's expectations of me. So I think, yeah, I think definitely a combination of the two.
Any other thoughts, Phoebe?
Yeah, totally. Bouncing off of what Charis said, it's like they're feeding off each other. I feel most of the time it's like internal pressure. You have your standards that you live up to and that you want to live up to. And then you go and meet people, you have your friends, your family, and then their expectations for you and their kind of wishes for you kind of amplify what you already felt in the first place. And it's just like a kind of tug of war, a back and forth of like just which one is your main pressure, to be honest.
I'm thinking back to high school. I mean, it's been like 8 years for me or something.
Boomer.
Not 8 years, not that long, but like 6 years. And I was also just thinking about parental like pressure, especially in the Asian culture. Our parents want us to do well, and you know, getting to college is almost like the like that's their goal in life for you. It's like, I made it as a parent if I can get my child into college. And so you feel like their pressure, and then it like their dreams and their expectations are like placed upon you, and it's like you're carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders, because your parents are like, you know, if you don't get into college, I've failed as a parent. And then you don't want them to feel that weight of failure. And so I think that adds like another aspect of pressure.
So actually, to segue off Calvin, what were some of the ways you learned to deal with some of that parental pressure?
That's a great question, Evan. I think the first thing that I had to learn was that my parents' words aren't the be-all, say-all in life. I think a part of growing up is really learning that, you know, there's a way to love your parents without making everything that they say absolute law in your life. And so I had to make a distinction between, you know, submission and respect, because I used to equate, you know, respecting my parents meaning submitting to every desire and request that they had. And just as an example, like, you know, I'm literally in seminary right now, and my parents don't really, they didn't like that decision. You know, it's not the most fiscally responsible decision an individual can make. You're not going to make a lot of money, and yet I still went. But, you know, I made it very clear that I respect their opinions. You know, I care a lot about what they say. And so I had to learn really to be clear about that with them. And I would just say, secondly, another coping mechanism that I had was really to just go to my friends, ask for help, discuss, and, you know, discuss with my parents as well, and just lay out like what's on my heart and really the stress that I'm feeling. I think the biggest thing for me in high school was I boiled it all in. I let it within me. I didn't really share it with anyone else. It led to a lot of problems.
Yeah, Charis, your senioritis season is approaching. So that means you're basically done with high school. Was there anything that you learned or that you wish you knew looking back?
I was actually thinking about what Calvin had just said. I was like, that's so true. Like, it really is. Just like his, finding the balance and the difference between just in like, how I respond to my parents and, the different, I guess, choices that we make in life, especially in choosing college and stuff. To be honest, I haven't really learned a lot about dealing with stress in high school, solely because I think I'm still dealing with that stress.
Yeah.
I think, I still don't get a ton of sleep. I still, procrastinate in doing my homework. I think I have just perpetuated a lot of the same, or continued a lot of the same habits that, I started like freshman year. And I think like maybe once I'm Calvin's age, not saying that you're old or anything, but like, after like this period of life, after this period of life has like passed, it'll like, I'll like think back on it and be like, oh, this is what I could have done differently. But I'm not sure, as I'm currently still in high school, I've actually learned anything about like dealing with stress yet.
That's good. What were some ways that you guys, like Phoebe, deal with stress since you're just entering high school? Stress is becoming a big thing.
I was actually, like what Charis said, really thinking about Calvin high school years and thinking, oh, whoa, that's totally me. I think, really admired that he's learned to really value communication and to kind of express yourself so you can take some burden off. That's something that I'm working on, and I hope I learn as I get in the difficulties of life, I guess. But I spend a lot of time just taking my mind off whatever the stress was, as like I'll look for a lot of distractions. For example, I'm like a huge fan of a lot of media. For example, like your webtoons, comics, anime. I kind of just absorb myself in that to try and get my mind off, to uplift my mood.
A fun question, since Phoebe mentioned she watches a lot of anime, are there any like funny things that you guys, funny mechanisms you guys have to deal with stress?
Stress eating is good. I will say that. I eat I literally keep all my candy, all my chips until that time when I'm sad, and I eat it all in one moment. I like have my, say, Halloween candy or the stuff I get for birthday gifts. I get like spicy chips. I'm like totally spicy. It's so good. And then whenever I feel sad, I just stuff myself. It feels amazing.
I mean, there's that, and you can just take a fat nap, just forget everything.
Or just take a nap, but then you wake up and you just feel stressed because you have like homework to do.
Yeah, so you take another nap.
Oh, interesting. I should try that.
I don't know if I recommend that. Okay, let's move on to something just a little bit deeper. Okay, so just like stressing about things like just in life, about like school, friendship, parents, whatever, does it reveal something about like our relationship with God?
Personally, I do feel that a lot of my stress is based on my like feeling kind of inadequate based on personality or my personal skills, etc. So I'm not really sure if that's exactly, like, I don't think it's God's fault per se. So I don't think that it's necessarily related to him, but there are a lot of worries and fears about like the things that you mentioned, future relationships, that I think I should definitely leave to him. Like, trust that he knows what's good for me.
Something I would say is that maybe I would agree with what you're saying, Evan, except maybe not in a conscious way, but rather in a subconscious way. I don't think we're thinking, oh, God God is not providing. But I think it's more the way that Phoebe actually characterized it. It's I feel like I need to take care of myself. I feel like I'm the only one, that can provide. And then when it comes down to it, I don't feel like I'm adequate enough. And therefore, subconsciously, really what we're thinking is that, God can't provide. And therefore, I have to be the one to watch out for myself. I have to be the one. And then when we look at ourselves, we're just like, yikes, like I'm not good enough. So
that's a good point.
Yeah, what are we gonna do?
I think definitely, as I'm going through college app season and waiting for responses, and I've gotten a couple back. I think definitely a huge part of the past couple of months was putting my really putting my trust in God, and there was a lot of prayers that went into it because trusting that He did have a path, and He does have a plan for my life, and I didn't need to carry all this stress and carry this whole burden of making the right decision because He already had that plan for my life. So I think that was something that I had to work through a lot the past couple of months, and something that I'm still working through. And I think it applies not just like college app season, but just in general. I would agree with Calvin in terms of like, it's a little bit less of, a conscious thought, like, oh yeah, I can feel myself, and more of like, it's a little bit more, I guess, of an unconscious, like, I need to, because I don't know. And it's like, you start to like think more and stress more. And it's like, it becomes a lot harder to operate and function.
So in a TED Talk I was listening to a few years back actually, there was a lady who was giving information about her research, and they found that people who viewed stress positively actually lived longer than people who didn't. And I thought it was really interesting to see that. And so my question for you guys is like, why do you think viewing stress positively can help people live longer? And like, why don't people just view stress more positively that way?
I think you can either use the stress, I feel like in a way, it's either you're manipulating the stress to propel you towards positive things, or you're letting the stress manipulate you and, and kind of, I guess, infiltrate just how you live your daily life and what you think about. And I guess your worldview as well on, life and other people and everything. I think it's quite hard to do, to view, all these hardships in life as something, in a positive light, in a positive manner. We tend to focus on the negative aspects of life. We tend to put a lot of emphasis on, all the bad things that happen. I think it's very easy, especially, early this year with COVID and, now with, everything that's happening. I think it's very easy to like turn on the news and be like, these are all these things that are happening out in the world. And then, there's all these things that are happening in my life as well. So I think, to kind of separate life, like these are all the good parts of life, and these are like the areas of life where, things aren't looking too great right now. And I think, being able to focus on the positive and, be like, hey, this is going really great in my life right now. And then also, but I guess using that stress that does come from the negative aspects to be like, okay, these are all the things though that, aren't doing well. Using, that stress as motivation to say, let me just try to fix maybe not everything that's happening, but one negative aspect of my life and drive it forward instead of, so I guess compartmentalizing like different aspects of life and then, seeing everything as like step by step rather than taking everything as a whole.
The verse I had to encourage you guys was Romans 5:3-4, which NIV says, "Not only so, but we also glory in our sufferings, because we know that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance, character, and character, hope." And I just thought this was like a good verse for when you're stressing out, especially as like high school and college students. It's really easy to get lost in it and like just set your mind like forward and not look above. And I thought that was a good verse, just as a good reminder.
I really agree with that, Evan. I think that oftentimes we fall into the mindset where life is all about us, what we can do, how we can perform, and like what we can provide. And a lot of that stress is a result of us falling short of the expectations that we have for ourselves. And I love that verse because it just reminds me that, even in my failure, God has a plan, and God is using it in a way to teach me something about myself, and really to teach me that he can provide even when I can't. And I think there's that like disconnect oftentimes that I'm feeling, where it's just like, no. Why should I depend on you, God? And then he's just like, but look, I will continue to carry you, like even when you can't carry yourself through life. And I think there's just something beautiful about that. So thanks for sharing that verse, Evan.
And I think one thing that also really helped me, especially in high school, was just like it's like praying and just talking with God. And I actually found a verse, Philippians 4:6-7. Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God, and the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. And I just thought like just praying, but I think it's also like good to like make sure it's not just complaining and like requesting, but like by prayer and petition with thanksgiving. Yeah. All right, so to cap off our podcast, we first talked about our sources of stress. So we covered that people from high school all the way to like college, grad school, and they feel stress from like homework, parents, deadlines, friends, like relationships. And we talked about like why they feel stressed. You know, like is it from the outside? A lot of people, they said they felt stressed from like the inside. They felt pressure from themselves. They amplified like outside sources. And we just talked about ways to deal with it. I talked about like communicating with parents, with friends is just really key to just dealing with stress and how people cope with it. We talked about unhealthy habits like stress eating or binge watching or binge sleeping. And we talked about how this affects our relationship with God, and you know, like just really reflecting on like any unconscious or subconscious tendencies you might have. And yeah, that's what we talked about. Thank you, Calvin, Phoebe, and Charis for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having me. It was lots of fun.
Thank you for having me.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for all tuning in, and we hope to see you on the next Real Talk episode. Peace.